Likkutei Torah Vaeschanan Daf Gimel. We're actually holding on the previous page, the end of the previous page by Ois Dalid. So we learned until now in the Maimer that when Moshe Rabbeinu said Ata hachiloisa laharis savdecha, he was actually asking for the Isus de La'ela that can't be reached by Avodas Atachten, by Isus de L'Sata. That's why it's called Ata Achiloisa, you began. It's this level where Hashem reveals himself not according to the Avodas Atachten. So says the Alter Rebbe further, Nois Dalid, V'hine, this Isus de La'ela, this Ata Achiloisa that can't be reached, and it comes matnas chinam from Hashem, it can never come bebechinas gilui mamish beseichel v'hasagas hamachshava mamish. This tremendously high level that could only be given by Isus de La'ela by itself can't be understood and can't be grasped intellectually, cognitively at all. Kileis machshava tfisa bach klal, no thought could grasp God, and these tremendously high levels, no thought could actually grasp it and understand it. Of course, this is in contrast to what the Alter Rebbe said at the beginning of the Maimer, that when it comes to davening, loy dai b'his beinunus levad, it's not enough just to meditate. One has to completely comprehend and internalize the fact that Hashem is Mamalik Kol Almin and Sovev Kol Almin. And the Alter Rebbe had said that that's what it means, that it's begilui, that we do bracha, that we draw down that light by perceiving it and understanding it and even coming to the emotions. That's what the Alter Rebbe explained what davening is about. But this level, as the Alter Rebbe explained in the previous Ois, and Ois Gimel, this level is only reached by Torah. It's not in Isus de L'Sata. Just by saying words of Torah, this level comes down and is revealed, but it can't be understood at all, because Leis Machshavat Visabach, and therefore this high level of Atachiloisa, of Matnas Chinam, of Hashem revealing himself without Avodas Atachten, it could only be perceived by the vision and sight of the heart. That's the words the Alter Rebbe uses, Re'iyah v'histaklos halev, the vision and staring of the heart, like it says, Einayich yoinim, like the doves look at each other in the eye. And so this level can't be understood, it could only be seen within the heart. In other words, like when you could see something and not understand it. Not understanding it doesn't make you see it less. So this level could only be seen with the vision of the heart, but can't be understood at all. Later on in the biur of this Maimer, we'll have an explanation of what that means. What does it mean to see something that can't be understood? But the Alter Rebbe is saying that this only could be seen by Bnei Yisrael when they reach the level of yoinosi tamasi, like it says in Shir Shir My Dove, that one reaches a very high madrega, to the extent that one becomes bibechinas einayim, the Indian of histaklus, without it being bibechinas hislapshus in one's thoughts and one's machshava. This level can't be comprehended at all in thought. It could be seen and stared at in the heart, and in the mind only shines a ray, a little teeny ray from this revelation, almost like a lightning flash, like the pasuk says, "V'yotza kabarak chitzoy," that his arrows shoot like lightning. So within one's mind, there's like a lightning flash of this tremendously high level. It can't be understood with a conceiving and intellectual cognition at all. It's an inyan that's also known as ishtoimim kishachada, that a person becomes completely shocked and confused from that small ray of this level that's being seen in the mind. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down this level in a way that all of the Jewish people should be able to see it. That's why the pasuk continues, Ve'eres ha'aretz, which literally means, let me see the land. But the deeper level is, Ve'eres ha'aretz, I want to bring the Re'iyah into the land. I wanted to bring the Re'iyah into Knesset Yisrael, into the Jewish people. And based on this, we could understand that, like we learned earlier, how the bracha of a mitzvah is higher than the mitzvah itself, that the bracha of the mitzvah reaches this level of Isus de La'ela, which can't be reached from the tachten and can only be visualized in the heart. So that's why these brachas were established by Anshe Knesses HaGedola, who are known, the Chachamim are known as Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the congregation, like Einayich yoinim, like the eyes of a dove, because their inyan is through the bracha of the mitzvah to draw down a ray of this aspect that could only be seen in the heart. And as we're going to learn later in the biur, that when it comes to these highest levels, vision and seeing each other is the way that zivug happens, the way that there's connection to levels is dafka through seeing it, as we're going to see later on. And in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe adds that based on this, we could also understand that where the pasuk says that Moshe says, "Ata chilois laharos es avdecha," you began showing your servant, and the pasuk continues your miracles, etc. That seemingly lefi pshuta, it's not understood. What do you mean you only showed lavdecha? You showed your servant. All the Jewish people, Hashem showed all the miracles and the wonders, and by Matan Torah, God spoke to us face to face. So what does it mean laharos es avdecha, that you only showed your servant? It's because Moshe is bechinas re'iyah, like it says, V'yar reishis loy, that Moshe draws down from that level of atachiloisa, and therefore he wanted to cross the Jordan, Ebrana, Ve'eres ha'aretz, to bring down this re'iyah to Eretz Yisrael also, that they should also have this re'iyah, this vision of the heart. So that's what Moshe is saying, that you only showed lavdecha, because the rest of the Jewish people didn't see this level of atachiloisa. Want us to be on a high level, like a dove, like Inai Chionim, to be able to perceive this level. Therefore, in order to draw down this bechina in a revealed way, Moshe began by saying, Vaeschanan el havaya, which the simple explanation means, I begged before God, but literally the words are Vaeschanan el havaya. I, so to speak, brought the Indian of Vaeschanan to havaya. Because by Shlomo Melech, when he built the Beis HaMikdash, the words that he used was Asher ischananti lifnei havaya. To daven before God, you would use the terminology as ischananti lifnei havaya. So what's Vaeschanan el havaya? The Alter Rebbe is going to say that he drew down this level to havaya, because this level is higher than havaya. And the way he explains it, the Alter Rebbe says that we have a contradiction, that sometimes the pasuk says Hashem kel rachum v'chanun, right? Hashem kel rachum v'chanun, that Hashem comes first, Havaya comes first, then rachum v'chanun. But there are other psukim that says, like in Ashrei, Chanun v'rachum Hashem, that Chanun v'rachum comes before Havaya. So Havaya kel rachum v'chanun is the pshat, that from Havaya, which is the source of all creation, is drawn down the midas of Chanun v'rachum. That's Havaya Chanun v'rachum. But when it says Chanun v'rachum before Havaya, that means that's coming from a level before Havaya, that in order for there to be the Hisavos, the creation through the Tzimtzum and the revelation of Hashem and the drawing of Hashem's light, all that is from the level of Chanun v'rachum, that's an Atzmos that's higher than Havaya. So Vaeschanan el Havaya means that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying that I draw down the Indian of Chanun in order that there should be a Havaya, into Havaya. It's such a high level that Havaya comes from it. And based on this, that we learned that Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to draw down that level of Isus de Le'ela that can't be reached by the Tachtun, the Anoichi Mishanoichi Atzmos. Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to reveal down here. We could understand based on this why Chazal say the meaning of Vaeschanan is he was asking for a matnas chinam, a gift for free. What does it mean, chinam? Chinam without mitzvahs. To reach the level chinam without mitzvahs. We're going to see in the biur a beautiful idea from the Mizritra Magid about this. We'll see later on. But right now the Alter Rebbe is saying that chinam means without mitzvahs, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to reach such a high level, such an exalted level above and above, that mitzvahs can't reach there. Chinam bli mitzvahs, that mitzvahs can't reach to draw down this level. Because this level is Bechina Madregas Makar or HaTorah. This level is the source of the light of Torah, whose root is very high up, and it's the Bechina. And the Madreg of Moshe Rabbeinu himself, who said, Anoichi Oimed ben Havaya ben Nechem, meaning the Sherish of the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu is the conduit that brings down Torah. His Neshama comes from Anoichi, right? He says, Anoichi Oimed ben Hashem ben Nechem. I stand between you and Hashem. But that means his Madreg is the Indian of Anoichi Misha Anoichi. When God says Anoichi upon himself, when God says I, when God says I, it means Atzmos. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu had the ability to draw down this level into Havaya. Vaeschanan el Havaya, Moshe Rabbeinu that came from the place of Anoichi, of Matnas Chinam, he was able to draw down Havaya through there being this Isrus del Eila without the Tachten doing anything. And the Alter Rebbe teaches up that that's what the words Be'ez Hahi, what does it say? Vaeschanan el Hashem Be'ez Hahi. At that time I did Vaeschanan. At that time, Be'ez Hahi. Hahi, that refers to Alma Diskasya. That's why Hahi in the third person, so to speak, because it's a level that's completely beyond revelation. And Moshe Rabbeinu brought it down into Be'ez, into a time and space, which is the parameters of this world. And that's because that there was Moshe Rabbeinu was saying that you already, Hashem, began having this Isus de Leila from the level of Anoichi, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw it down into Eretz Yisrael. Now V'hine, Azlan Iskaim Bakashazu, at that time, when Moshe Rabbeinu asked for it was not fulfilled, that this Isus de Leila should come by itself. The opposite, Hashem wants the world to function right now in such a way that the Isus de Leila is dependent on Isus Latata. And that's the Indian of Yehoshua and the rest of Klal Yisrael that entered the land of Israel, and they did do mitzvahs in a way of Isus de Lasata, that the mitzvahs do arouse that high level. And even the Birchas HaMitzvahs that we do now arouse the level of Isus de Leila, which gives the power for the Isus de Latata itself. But not the Chinam, not the revelation of Mamish Anoichi Mish Anoichi without Isus de Lasata, just Isus de Leila by itself. That Moshe Rabbeinu until now wasn't Matzliach, but La'asid Lavai, when Mashiach comes, then it's Ki Ayin Ba'ayin Yiru V'Goymer. We will see Hashem with our eyes, meaning that we will see this tremendous exalted level that could only be seen with the vision of the heart. Adkan is the Maimer, now begins the Kitzer. The Alter Rebbe says a Kitzer of the Maimer. Ois Aleph of the Maimer we learned that this world is a very lowly world, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to illuminate this world, created Neshamas Nervai Nishmas Adam to illuminate Olam Hazeh. And how do we illuminate Olam Hazeh? Through Kriya Shema and davening. What's the meaning of Kriya Shema and davening? That Havaya should be revealed in one's heart in a deep way, that a person has a spilus, that person is ecstatically excited in the depths of one heart from Hashem. That's Baruch Ata Havaya, that a Havaya should be Baruch, meaning revealed in our heart, which we learned is the meaning of Tefillah. Ois Beis then explains in a deeper level what's this inyan of Gilu Shem Havaya in the heart. That means that a person comprehends the inyan of Ubetuvay Mechadish B'chol Yoyim Masa Bereishis, that every moment Hashem is making a Bria Chadosha Mamish, a completely new creation, not just the inyan of Ishtalshalis, that's the lower levels, Gilu Yahelim. But Havaya means a completely new revelation, and a person has to meditate on that and bring that into a person's heart, and that's V'hafta Es Havaya Likecha, that Havaya should be shoyre b'cha, should be revealed within you, v'ahavta, in a revealed way, b'chol levavcha, within both hearts, the pnimius and the chitzonius of the heart. As we learned in the Maimer, what that means, that it means the understanding and the love is the pnimius, and that it affects a person's outer way of functioning, the skafia, etc., that's the chitzonius. And through this Isus de Lasata is drawn the Isus de Leila, that there should be bracha v'hamshacha begilui, that Hashem's light should be revealed in an open way. But then in Ois Gimel, we said, Talmud Torah keneged kulam, Torah is way above Tefillah, Torah is the bechin of Isus de Leila, that an Isus de Lasata cannot reach ever. That's Atachiloisa, the level of Hashem, you beginning. And even for later on, for the Bin Isus de Lasata, that's the first Bin Isus de Leila to allow that Isus de Lasata as well. But Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down and reveal this level of Isus de Leila that can't be reached from the Avodas HaTachten, and that's why he says, Ebrana, let me cross into the land of Eretz Yisrael and draw down this Bechin of Atachiloisa. And then in Ois Daled, at the end of the Maimer, we learned that this Amshacha is from a Bechina that can't be comprehended and understood Be'eslapshus HaMachshava in a real cognitive, intellectual way. Only a ray, only a ha'ara, a ray from this level, like a lightning flash, v'yatza kabar chitza, like a lightning flash within a person's heart. And that's what Moshe said, Ve'eretz ha'aretz, to draw down the Re'iyah into Aretz, into Eretz Yisrael, into Knesset Yisrael. Like the Pasuk also says, V'havaya aleihem ye'ro'eh, that God should be seen by them. Einayich yoinim, eyes of a dove. And that's why Chachamim, that are called Einei ha'eda, they're connected to the end of the eyes, they were able to be misaken Birchas HaMitzvahs, which touch this level that Isus de Leila can't reach. And in order to be able to draw down this level, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Vaeschanan el Havaya, that he draw down from the level of Chanun, from the compassion of Atzmus in himself, which is also this compassion that's higher than Havaya, is known as Oitzer Matnas Chinam, the treasure house of matnas chinam, of gifts for free, because the Isus de Lasata can't reach that at all. And Vaeschanan el Havaya means Moshe Rabbeinu came from that level, draw down the inyan of Havaya, which is the Isus de Leila that can't be reached through the Avodas HaTachten. That's the summary of the Maimer. And now begins the biur to the Maimer Vaeschanan. And here in the Bir, the Alter Rebbe is going to speak in a more Kabbalistic terminology to explain the inyonim that we learned in the Maimer of this level and that level. The Alter Rebbe is now going to bring the Kabbalistic counterpart to these inyonim that was explained al Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe says that we began with saying Baruch Ata Havaya, which we learned is the inyan of Mechadish B'Tuvei B'Chayim Tamen Ma'aseh Bereishis, that Hashem is creating Ma'aseh Bereishis from new all the time. Says the Alter Rebbe, what does it mean that Baruch Ata Havaya is this continuous creation? Because Shem Havaya is an Atzilus. And Atzilus within Havaya, there is a Shtalshalus, meaning one level brings about the next. So from Atzilus, from Shem Havaya, which is B'chlolus Yud is Chachma, and then afterwards is the rest of Atzilus, that's all within Atzilus is his Shtalshlus, one level brings to the next. But Chachma itself, Me'ayin Timatzeh, not in a way of Shtalshlus, but rather as a completely new thing. Because there's a parsa, there's a curtain that stops between Keser and Chachma, and therefore for Chachma to come after Keser, this parsa makes that it's a completely new thing, new creation. The Shefa changes to a complete different mahus. When it comes from Keser to Chachma, it's a completely different type of Shefa, it's a different type of light. It's not an inyan of Shtalshlus from one level to the next, like Chachma and below. But rather, Chachma Lagabe Keser is known as Yesh Ma'ayin. Uvetuvei Mechadesh, Yesh Ma'ayin, from new Mamish. And that's through the Yud of Shem Havai, which is the Chachma coming after the Parsa. So that's in Kabbalah, the Alter Rebbe is explaining that the reason that it's called Mechadesh, that it's a Chiddush Mamish, is because as opposed to Atzilus from Chachma and down, which is a way of Ishtalshalus, Chachma from Keser comes in a completely new way, a completely different type of Shefa, because of this Parsa that separates Keser from Chachma. And in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe adds, what is this parsa between Keser and Chachma? So it's known as the inyan of the Kruma des Chafi al Moichas Tima. Moichas Tima is Chachma shebekeser, it's the hidden Chachma within Keser, and the Krum is the membrane, there's some kind of membrane that covers the brain, and so this membrane that covers the Moichas Tima, that hides, so to speak, the Moichas Tima of Keser, this membrane is the parsa, is this curtain, so to speak, that makes Chachma a completely new thing. And then the Alter Rebbe adds that maybe this parsa is even higher than Moichas Tima, that it's actually the parsa is the Keser itself. And as we know that the Yud, the Kutzishal Yud, the thorn on top of the Yud, corresponds to Keser, and the Yud itself corresponds to Chachma. And therefore that's the idea that through this membrane there's a completely new revelation, and we have to draw that down. That's Mechadish B'Tuvei B'Chayim Dan Ma'aseh Bereishis. How is that drawn down? From Zera Berech Havaya, from the seed that draws down the flow from Havaya, that they're mamshech the gili of Havaya down here below, from above Hishtal Shalos. And that's in davening. That davening is when we do this Zera Berech Havaya, this drawing down of Havaya, that we could reach Havaya in davening, as opposed to the level of Matnas Chinam. In davening, we could reach and draw down this level of Havaya through Suzdal Asata, through refining and doing a birur of the 288 nitzoitzes, which is the halas man, meaning that by a person rectifying themselves in davening. Davening is the man, is the main nukvin, is the feminine moisture, to be able to call out, scream out to Hashem. And so to the maisa mitzvahs, with a klaf of tefillin, etc., with all the physical things that one does mitzvahs with, all these are birurei repach nitzoitzin, they're all the rectification of the sparks, and through that, mayin nukvin, through this feminine arousal, is drawn down as a result mayin dechurin, the masculine moisture, which comes from chachmas tima, from keser. So these are all ideas that we can draw down, that our avodah does reach. But then there's the inyan of birchas ha-mitzvahs. The bracha on mitzvahs is the isus de la'ela that allows there to be an isus de la'sata, which is why the halach is that the brachas have to be made, the bracha of mitzvah has to be over la'siyasan before you do the mitzvah. Because in other words, allowing that the mitzvah should be able to do the isus de la'sata, you need an isus de la'ela first, which is the bracha of the mitzvah. And chachamim are the ones that were able to establish this, because they're called einei ha'eda, the eyes of the congregation, einai chyonim, the eyes of a dove. And so the Alter Rebbe says, what's this whole idea of the eyes of seeing? Like we learned in the Maimer, that this level that Isus de la'ela, that can't be reached from Avodas HaTachton, can't be understood, but it could be seen with the vision of the heart. What does that mean? So the Alter Rebbe brings from Eitz Chaim, from the Arizal, that he says that for Abba and Ima, or Zocher v'Nukva, in other words, for Chachma de Bina, or the Zeranpin and Malchus to be able to have a zivug, they have to look, they have to stare at Arach Anpin, at Keser, at the high level of Keser. Meaning that their ability to do the zivug, the different partsufim of Atzilus, for them to have a zivug, is by staring, by looking at Arach Anpin. Because the inyanim of zivug, where there's an actual, so to speak, male and female, masculine moisture and feminine moisture, this connection of body to body, so to speak, that's only in Atzilus, where they're actually partsufim. But above Atzilus, for there to be a yichud, is by staring, is by looking. Because it's such a high level that the only revelation of it is through looking, is by looking at it. It can't be reached, so to speak, bodily, in a more concrete way, through a zivug gufni, so to speak. It's only through a staklus. And this staklus draws down a revelation from the mitzvah of Atik, from the forehead of Atika Kadisha, meaning from the highest level of Keser, into Zocher v'Nukva, which is what allows there to be this yichud of Zocher v'Nukva. Because in order for there to be this zivug, the yichud of Zocher and V'Nekeva, there has to be first moichin, the drawing down of moichin, which is this inyan of the staring. There has to be first moichin in order for there to be a zivug, just like al derech mashal down here below, that a katan can't give birth. A katan ain't a moilid, because he doesn't have das, he doesn't have moichin. His moichin are still bekatnus, and they're not b'shleimus. But when he gets bigger and he grows up, his moichin gets stronger, and they get bigger. Then he has koich halada, then he's able to give birth. And so to al derech mashal, in order for there to be a yichud above in Atzilus, there has to be hamshachas hamoichin drawn down into Abba ve'im and Zocher v'Nukva, which is from Keser, from looking, from staring at Abba, at Arach Anpin, by staring at Keser. Through that, the staring is drawn down the moichin to allow for there to be this yichud and the zivug. So the staring is what allows there to be the yichud, and that's why also the same idea that chacham, the chachamim, who are einei ha'eda, the people of staring, so to speak, they did birchas hamitzvahs to give the koyach, the same thing, that we should be able to do the yichud, that we should have the ability to do isrus de lasata through ma'isa hamitzvahs, that the ma'isa hamitzvahs is able to draw down this, but the ability from that is from the birchas hamitzvahs, which comes from chachamim einei ha'eda, that they're able to draw down this estaklus, the staring of atik, of keser, into the Zocher v'Nukva, that they should have the koyach to have a zivug. And then the Alter Rebbe explains the actual Kabbalistic levels that we're talking about, that the inyan of the staring, the histaklos, that's above Toyu and Tikkun, because Toyu is the inyan of Nekudim, and that's where the Shviras HaKelim was, in the world of Nekudim, therefore Toyu from Shviras HaKelim. And then the refining of these sparks is the Mayin Nukvin that brings about the revelation of Tikkun. And that's the Sus de Lasata through the Sus de La'ela. And that's all from the Kudim and below. But in the Bechin of Akudim, the inyan of Akudim, where there's only one Kli, where there's no Kalim, a separate Kalim, everything is Akudim is where everything is connected as like one inyan. There's still complete Achdus. That's the level of Isus de La'ela that is above Isus de Lasata, and that could only be drawn down through Istaklus, which is the inyan of Birchas HaMitzvahs. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to cross into the land, to draw down this Re'iyah into Aretz. Why Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu? Al Pi Kabbalah, Moshe Rabbeinu is known as Yesoid Abba. Yesoid Abba means Moshe draws down, that's Yesoid, draws down from Abba, from Chachma to down below. And Chachma we know is the inyan of Re'iyah. Chachma is connected to vision, like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, V'yar Reishis Loi. And in all worlds and all levels it says such, that the highest level of vision is an inyan of Chachma. And the inyan of Aretz, where Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to enter Eretz Yisrael, the Eretz is the inyan of Malchus, and it says in Kabbalah that the whole time that they were in the desert, Dor HaMidbar, Malchus was Ocher Ba'ocher, was back to back with the higher levels, and Moshe Rabbeinu wanted them to be face to face, which means the entering into the land, Bayim La'aretz, through Moshe Rabbeinu himself, where he'd be able to draw down this vision, this Re'iyah, this Staklos, this level of Isus de La'ela, which is above Isus de Lasata. And now the Alter Rebbe explains, to understand a little, what does this mean, this vision? What is this vision we're talking about in Ruchnius that can't be comprehended, understood intellectually, cognitively, but could only be seen? So the mashal that he brings to explain this, which is brought down in Chassidus quite often, It's actually found in the Pri Eitz Chaim that one time Rabbi Avram Halevi, who was one of the students of the Arizal, he entered where the Arizal was, and the Arizal was sleeping. And the Arizal woke up, apparently from this Rabbi Avram Halevi entering. And the Arizal said that during his sleep, he heard so many secrets of Torah in the parshas of Balak and Bilam that if he would, for 80 years, would be derish if he would try to teach what he saw, what he heard during his sleep, in 80 years straight, night and day, he still wouldn't be able to explain it. So the Alter Rebbe says, how is that possible? How could a person in 2 hours be able to have a perception of something that more than 80 years wouldn't be able to explain it? And the inyan is because that's the inyan of Hasaga V'Gilui, which is called Re'iyah. It's something that can't be come down to Tvuna and Hasaga. It's something that's such a high level that can't be understood. It could only be seen with the eyes of the heart. And that's what the Arizal had in his dream. He had this vision that in 80 years can't be explained with words, etc., with understanding. It's a level that's above that. And that's why it also says in Eitz Chaim that Re'iyah is makif. Seeing something and not understanding it is a makifdik way of taking it in. It's still a makif. It doesn't enter your pnimius because you're only seeing it, but you're not comprehending it. And al derech zeh, that's how the Arizal had this bechin of re'iyah. And that's what it means, V'yareishis leiba Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw this down into Knesset Yisrael, Ve'eres ha'aretz, Aretz is Knesset Yisrael, Malchus. And this level of Anoichi Mishanoichi, this Atachiloisa, this level that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to bring down, is also known as Eden, not Gan Eden, but Eden itself, which is going to be revealed L'Asad Lavi through Mashiach. By the way, the Rebbe Rashab in Samach Vav, especially the first Mamarim, speaks a lot about this, the meaning of Eden. Eden is this ultimate revelation of Akudim, of this highest level that Esuz Lasata can't reach. And Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to be poyel to have it revealed in Eretz Yisrael, so that's why the next pasuk is Va'ata Yisrael Shema Lechukim. Now Yisrael, listen. Because he wasn't able to draw them that they should be able to see it, so he's saying that we should only listen, which is why we say Shema Yisrael. We're only in a level right now of listening, we can't see it. But L'Asilave will be revealed, this level of Eden will be able to see it. And that's the end of Ois Aleph of the Biur. Now in Ois Beis of the Biur, the Alter Rebbe continues that this inyan, this highest level, is the inyan of Matnas Chinam, what Chazal say, Vaeschanan el Havaya, that he wanted a Matnas Chinam, a gift for free, and we learned in the Maimer itself, free from mitzvahs, that one doesn't do mitzvahs to draw it down, it can't be drawn down through mitzvahs, and it's such a high level that even mitzvahs can't reach. And so the Mezritcher Maggid explained that this is the pnimiyasdik explanation of what the Jewish people say in Parshas Baloischa, Zacharnu es hadoga shanoichel b'mitzrayim chinam. We remember the fish that we used to eat in Egypt for free. And Rashi says, what does it mean chinam? Chinam in a mitzvahs. And so the simple explanation without Chassidus is that the Jewish people are, so to speak, complaining that they don't want to have to do mitzvahs. They want it for free without having to do mitzvahs. In Egypt, they got all the fish, everything they needed to eat without having to do mitzvahs, and they're complaining that that's how we want it now also. In other words, something very negative about Klal Yisrael. But the Mezritcher Maggid explained that the Pnim is the inyan of what does it mean? That they remember the fish that they ate in Mitzrayim Chinam, meaning that the Shefa came down from such a high level that Esuz de Lasata can't reach it, even through Maisa Mitzvahs. And that was what was revealed in Mitzrayim. That was what was revealed in Egypt, presumably by Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Maggid says that's what the Jewish people were asking for, that they should get this revelation again of a place that can't be achieved through Maisa Tachten. And as we learned, this level is way above Shem Havaya, which is how we learned in the Maimer. He repeats in the Biur what it says in the Maimer, that sometimes it says Chanun v'Rachum Havaya, and sometimes Havaya Rachum v'Chanun. Because Havaya Rachum v'Chanun is Midas Rachmim that comes from Havaya. But there's Rachamim that's above Havaya, Rachamim Gedolim, the Rachamim in Atzmus, the inyan of Rachamim Atzmiyim. That's Chanun v'Rachum Havaya. The Chanun v'Rachum brings about Havaya, which is why Moshe Rabbeinu said, Vaeschanan el Havaya, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down from the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, which is the source of Atzilus, to Havaya. And based on all this, we could also understand the Alter Rebbe says in parentheses what's found in the Safra Tzniusa, the hidden book, which is one of the most difficult parts that there is in the Zohar. And the Sifr Safed Tznius, so the Zohar says that when Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem Elikim ata chiloisa, that God, Elikim, you began, is the revelation of Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim in Tishrei. Now, seemingly a pipshat, what in the world does Moshe Rabbeinu's request to enter the land have to do with Tishrei? What does one have to do with the other? But according to we learned, it makes perfect sense because Ata Chiloisa means Hashem, you begin yourself. Isuz de La'elad, which is above an Isuz de La'sata, which is the inyan of Yugim Amidas Rachamim, which is the inyan of Vaeschanan, Matnas Chinam. And that, of course, is what's revealed in Tishrei with Yirgel Midas Rachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. And the Alter Rebbe continues that that's also why the names of God that Moshe Rabbeinu uses over here is Adna Elikim. The name Aleph Dalet and Havai Benikud Elikim. The reason being because Shem Adna is connected to Malchus, which shines in Rosh Hashanah. And Havai Benikud Elikim, Havai with the Nakudis that you pronounce it Elikim, that's the name of Tshuva, that's what shines in Yom Kippur. And they bring about the Yigam Amidas Harachamim, and therefore these names, Havai Adna Elikim, is what is going to bring about this Matnas Chinam, this Ata Chiloisa, this Yigam Amidas Harachamim. And that's also the connection of Ebrana. Moshe says, Ebrana, I want to cross over to the land. The Alter Rebbe says that's connected to what it says by the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, Vayavor Hashem al Panav Vayikra. That's Ebrana, I want to cross over. The Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim is also a crossing over because it's crossing over to that place of Hashem above, having anything to do with creation. And that's why he has such Rachamim on creation. That's Vayavar Hashem al Panav Vayikra. He has to be over to a place way above Ishtalshalos. And Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to bring this down. He was able to come to this place because Vayar Reishis Loi, he's connected to the inyan of Chachmi Law, of above Ishtalshalos, which is why throughout the book of Dvarim, whenever Moshe Rabbeinu talks to us and refers to Hashem, it says Hashem Aleikecha, Havai Aleikecha. In Shema Yisrael it says Havai Aleikeinu. What's the difference? Havai Aleikecha is Or Ein Sof already in Zun. To have Or Ein Sof that's already coming to the contracted spheres that have to do with creation, Zocher v'Nukva, is their Anpin and Malchus. So Or Ein Sof that become the Moichin, that become the light of Zocher and Nukva, of Zeranpin, of the 7 lower spheres, that's called Havai Aleikecha. That's when Hashemas Yisrael received from. But Moshe Rabbeinu Ish Elikim was above the inyan of Malchus Datzilas completely. He was above Dibur, which is why he wasn't able to talk clearly, because he wasn't able to be descend mashpilas atzmai to the inyan of Dibur. Only the Shechina spoke through his mouth. And therefore usually said Havai Aleikecha because he was above that level. But Kriya Shema, which is the yichud of Abba and Ima, of Chochmah and Bina, then it says Havai Aleikeinu, because we're all at that level when we say the Shema. And this is the level that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down Ve'eres Ha'aretz, to bring down Re'iyah to Eretz Yisrael. But he wasn't poil. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't successful at that time, because like we learned early in the Maimer, Hashem wants this was the Lasata. But he was poil that it should be drawn down. This Re'iyah is in a way of makif. It's not an or pnimi, it's not something we mamish comprehend, but there is the makif of this Re'iyah, which is the inyan of Birchas HaMitzvahs. Birchas HaMitzvahs, like we learned, which is an Isuz de La'ela, which comes from the place of Matnas Chinam, which allows there to be this Isuz de Lasata after, so that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to be poil. But then in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe asks, what do you mean he wasn't able to be poil? Seemingly we learned that Torah Tzivalanu Moshe, the Torah we have is the inyan of Isuz de La'ela, which is above Isuz de Lasata, so l'chayra his bakasha was accepted. But the Alter Rebbe explains no, because in order to receive, in order to it be revealed what's happening when you learn Torah, you have to daven first. You have to be mispal first from the deepest depths of the heart. Then you could draw down, then you could in an openly way see this in Torah. Of course this is in Torah, this level is in Torah without our Avodah, but for it to be revealed, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be revealed. For it to be revealed now, we have to first daven. We have to daven to allow ourselves to be able to be sensitive to the elokus that's in Torah. Just like Chazal say, "Pischuli kechudash al machad vani eftel chal kepischa shel ulam." Open up an opening for me like the eye of a needle. If you open up for me, Hashem says, just like the eye of a needle, I'll open up for you kepischa shel ulam, which the simple meaning is like the width of a hall, a grand hall. But of course, the ulam was in the Beis Hamikdash that didn't have doors. So what does it mean, I'll open up for you the ulam? Seemingly the ulam didn't have doors in the Beis Hamikdash. Elamad, this is the Isuz de La'ela, which is always there. There are no doors. But we have to have tefillah first. That's the chudash al-machad, the eye of a needle, for us to be able to perceive this revelation that's in Torah as is. And of course, there are many, many different levels of this revelation. And the more that a person learns, davens before Torah, one is able to feel this more, which is, of course, why Abba Binyamin said that he would daven always before he learned. But the Iker Bakasha Moshe Rabbeinu was to draw down the inyan of Re'iyah and Esak Torah, that we should mamish see, like the Arizal saw, that we should see what's going on in the Torah that we learn. Like David HaMelech also asked for this when he said, Gal Einai va'abita niflois miterasecha.